Testing. There we go. Attaboy. Humanity has been battling mental illness ever since the first man walked the earth. It's one of our greatest struggles, and it's one of the most common things that afflicts humanity. According to the CDC, more than 50% of the people in the US will develop some sort of mental illness throughout their life. 1 in 5 Americans will suffer from it every year. Understandably, since mental illness is such a common problem, much research has been conducted on treating this global ailment. Countless studies and experiments have been conducted in order to better understand our minds and how they operate. However, we are far from fully understanding how our brain works, and it's unclear if we will ever fully understand it. An unbelievable amount of progress has been made concerning psychology in the last 3 decades, and we are ever closer to cracking the code behind our minds. With all this progress in the scientific field of mental wellness, we forget that people have more to them than meets the eye. Every individual is unique and overcomes adversity differently. It's important to keep this in mind when dealing with mental health issues. I believe, based on reasonable evidence, that there is no magic bullet when it comes to dealing with these issues. As to say, there is no perfect drug that affects everyone the same and perfectly solves their problems. I propose that a more holistic approach is needed. We should balance medicine with good lifestyle choices, moral decisions, and even spirituality. None of these things alone magically cure mental illness. Instead, I believe combining all of these things together is a much more effective solution to this great issue. Before I explain exactly why I believe this approach is necessary, let's first examine how mental illness originates in the first place. This is a very complicated question that we still don't 100% know the answer to. From my research, I've learned that in most cases, many factors combined lead to the rise of mental afflictions. This can depend on the person, their life choices, situation, diet, genetics, and traumatic events are the main few that keep popping up when you look at cases of people with mental illness. Genetics and traumatic events seem to be the most common ways these issues spring up. There was a prominent theory during the 80s that most mental illnesses was a result of chemical imbalances of serotonin and dopamine in the brain. This hypothesis has been found wanting in the last 2 decades. While there are some patterns that appear in people suffering from depression and other mental illnesses, not all cases include these imbalances. According to the book Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker, the evidence for this theory is wobbly at best. It had arisen out of tunnel thinking that relied on an inadequate evaluation of certain findings not consistent with the initial assumption. Since it's clear that the chemical imbalance theory has been found wanting in the last 2 decades, let's examine some other theories about the origin of mental illness. Let's take ADHD, for example. It's mostly genetic, and if the parents have it, it's likely it will be inherited by the children, according to Healthline. The same is the case for ADD. It very commonly comes from your parents. Take my family, for example. My dad has been diagnosed with ADD, and my mom very likely has the same thing, just undiagnosed. This led to every single child in my family to develop it. The vast majority of mental health cases that I've researched were inherited by their parents. I'm telling you this because it's important to know the origins of something before you go about solving it. This is the same process that most psychiatrists use to diagnose their patients. Everyone is unique, and everyone has their own puzzle to solve when it comes to tackling mental illness. Living with mental illness can be a nightmare. It can make even the most basic tasks seem impossible. It's important to be able to recognize the symptoms of the most common mental health cases for your own good and the benefit of your loved ones. I'll start by talking about bipolar disorder. Sufferers of bipolar disorder spend most of their lives in a cycle of depression-like symptoms and other times feel like they're on top of the world. Living like this can be very confusing and scary. Going from lacking energy and feeling down for weeks at a time to feeling overjoyed and elated can be an extremely hard way to go through life. Luckily, a combination of medication and therapy works in most cases of bipolar people. People with depression, on the other hand, often have no energy, lack motivation, difficulty concentrating or remembering things, self-doubt, and in extreme cases, suicidal thoughts. These feelings can be unrelenting. It can feel like there's a dark fog over your life that makes even the most basic tasks like getting out of bed and taking a shower feel impossible. On the other hand, some people suffer from anxiety, whether it be social, obsessive-compulsive, or other general phobias. This can lead to major impairment in daily life when untreated. Luckily, common medications like Xanax combined with therapy often attack the root of the issue and can work wonders when battling this mental ailment. Dealing with mental illness can be a nightmare at times. I think it's important to understand that struggle is never without merit. Once you overcome your struggles, you become a more complete person as a result. The Republic by Plato states, Zalapa ta kala, which means nothing beautiful comes without struggle. Now I'm going to move on to possible solutions to mental health issues. The easiest way to deal with it is, of course, preventing it from occurring in the first place. Positive life choices and healthy habits can go a long way to helping your body and mind feel good. Being social, eating right, breaking up the monotony of daily life can work wonders for mental health. Bad actions can also have a serious effect on your mental well-being, as well as the mental state of those around you, if done repeatedly. In the Wisdom of the Buddha, it states, bad deeds and deeds hurtful to ourselves are easy to do. What is beneficial and good, that is difficult to do. Even spiritual aspects can be very beneficial to improving your mental health. However, prayer and belief can go a long way to keep you from losing hope in your battle with mental illness. However, I know as well as anyone that all of these things are not always easy. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of mental health issues are genetic. And even if they aren't, sometimes it's not easy to have control over your life and make positive decisions. This is where things get complicated and vary from person to person. For example, some people's issues come from a mental block that they need to overcome. This normally arises from a traumatic event in the person's past that the brain is not yet ready to process, and so it gets buried deep in the person's psyche. In this case, medicine may not be effective, but spirituality and positive reinforcement may work wonders. Sometimes simply believing that treatment is working can go a long way to helping you get better. Something I've found helps immensely is just talking about the problem. It can be incredibly difficult not only to acknowledge that you have a problem, but also to have the courage to talk about it. Trust me, even though it may seem hard to talk about your struggles, just having an outside opinion or talking to someone you trust can help immensely when it comes to dealing with anxiety, depression, or any other mental ailment. It's even better if you can talk with someone who understands and can relate to your situation. If you aren't ready or don't feel comfortable enough to talk with someone you know, a therapist is always a good option. Counseling is good, mostly because people need someone to talk to who won't judge and will just listen. Sometimes having someone listen to your struggles can feel liberating and can go a long way to helping you feel better. So far, I've gone over a lot of alternative ways to tackle mental illness, but now it's time to talk about medication. Medicine has advanced tremendously over the last century. Our understanding of the brain and mind has increased immensely. Without a doubt, we are closer than ever before to cracking the code behind our minds. Doctors have developed countless medications and treatments that work wonders for certain people. Medicine in the field of psychology has gone a long way from the medieval times where people would drain of their blood to deal with depression. And anyone that was dealing with mental health issues was labeled crazy. That being said, we are still quite a ways away from fully understanding the mind and coming up with a universal cure to mental illness. In the meantime, most of our common medicine is quite effective to alleviate some of the symptoms of mental illness. As amazing as medicine is, it definitely has its downsides and imperfections. Everyone's body is unique and handles prescription drugs differently. Some of these factors may include body weight, metabolism, allergies, genetics, among many other things. This makes the job of psychiatrist quite difficult. According to Dr. Hawkins, whom I interviewed for this thesis, each patient is unique, and it takes cooperation from both the psychiatrist and the patient for a proper diagnosis. Since everyone is different, a doctor has to make an educated guess on the dosage and what medicine to describe to the patient based on these factors. This lack of precision comes with a myriad of risks. Your body could react quite negatively to the medicine, and what should have helped with depression ends up doing the opposite and worsens your symptoms. Also, there can be lots of human error when it comes to prescribing prescription drugs. The patient can leave out key details in the prescription process, or the psychiatrist can be too hasty when it comes to prescribing medicine and give the patient the wrong dosage or drug. Even with all the risks, in most cases, medicine goes a long way to battling mental illness, and you should never be afraid to seek help for your mental health issues. I would like to take a moment to address the counterpoint to my thesis. Some may say that you can pray away mental illness and God will solve the problem as long as you plead with Him enough. While God is powerful and can solve any problem you have, I believe this is the wrong way of going about it. God gives us the abilities and tools to solve our own problems and learn from them as a result. God could fix the issue, but we would never learn that way. Another counterpoint I often hear is that any mental health issue can be solved with the right dosage of the correct medicine. This may be true to a certain extent, but according to my research and the medical professionals I've interviewed, this is only a partial truth. Medicinal drugs can be immensely helpful in most cases, but don't always attack the root of the issue. Everyone is unique, and sometimes medicine can just suppress the issue and not actually solve it, or in some extreme cases, make things worse for the patient. I've stated all this to demonstrate that there is no perfect medicine or method that applies to every individual. According to my research, I have determined that dealing with mental illness is a complicated and difficult process. Everyone is unique and must be treated as such. While some procedures may work perfectly for one, it may have a negative effect on the other. There are millions of people around the world that struggle with mental health related issues every year. Considering this fact, I believe that this is an incredibly important topic to bring awareness to. It's important to stay aware. It's important to stay aware of the struggles of the people around you. Mental illness is complex and hard to recognize in people sometimes. People are exceptionally good at hiding their struggles. So make sure to check up on your loved ones and recognize the complex signs that someone may be battling mental illness behind the scenes. Millions of lives could be changed for the better if society had a larger focus on the complexities of mental health issues. All of these things combined is why I believe we should be taking a more holistic approach to dealing with mental health. Thank you.
Very well done, Jason.
Thank you.
There we go. Is this on? There we go. Okay. Very well done. And can I just say that I think you have a depth of understanding in this regard than most of the professors I've interacted with in this subject, which is really impressive for your age. So
thank you.
I'm proud of you in that regard, and in a lot of other regards too. So thank you. How does it feel to be done with the hard part?
Good. I mean, we still got 40 minutes of interview, but it feels good.
This will be the fun part.
I hope.
So why did you choose this particular topic, and why do you think it's important for people to hear this message?
Well, I've known that I was going to do this topic for years. I feel like it's a very important thing that's dear to my heart, and I feel like I said in my thesis, the world could be changed for better if people understood the complexities of this issue. It's a very important thing to recognize in others and be able to recognize in yourself.
So usually the people ask this question first, but I'm going to lead somewhere. What are your plans for next year?
I'm going to go to Midland College and pursue a degree in psychology.
So how do you plan on using the lessons that you've learned in this research for your career?
Well, I mean, it's very practical. I mean, understanding the complexities of mental illness is kind of the first step to being a psychiatrist. And also, I feel like I have kind of a unique perspective on it, and I can relate to a lot of things that people are going through from my own struggles. So I feel like all that would be great for applying it to my future career.
Excellent. And I think you'll find a common pattern as well, that people who make the best counselors are people who have gone through the same problems that the people they're counseling are going through, right? So I also want to dig deeper into some of your responses to the counterpoints that you brought up. So can you clarify a bit more? What do you think are some lessons that God teaches us instead of just removing us from the struggle or the battle with mental health?
Like I said, I mean, struggle is not without merit. If the person never struggled in the first place, they wouldn't grow as a result. So I think there's something powerful in that God gives us the ability to, I guess, solve our own problems and struggle through them and then learn from them, become a better person as a result.
So in some ways, the growth is more permanent because it changes who we are.
Yeah.
Right. So let's see. I have a lot of questions because there's a lot to unpack here.
I can tell.
What might be some ways in which prayer still is, a critical part of the process? How do you understand that?
I feel like a lot of it's easy to lose hope when you're battling mental illness, and prayer can go a long way to helping you, I guess, fight that hopelessness that you may feel. And not only that, I mean, God is wonderful. Praying can never, I guess, be bad for you, but it's also very good for your mental state.
I mean, I think you're right that it keeps the vision alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It keeps that there's a finish line that can be reached.
Right.
And it keeps you from just sort of falling into complacency in that pit of despair. So I agree completely. But I have, I'll come back and ask questions. People take their turn.
Okay. All right, Jason, good job.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to start with just a little bit. I'm just walking through the day, and I'm having a bad day, feeling kind of down, kind of blue. And so does that, mean that I have mental illness?
No.
So can you define mental illness for me?
I mean, I guess when it comes to something like depression, it's definitely more permanent. It's more, I don't think tangible is the word, but it's more prevalent throughout every aspect of your life. While you may have like momentary reprieve from it, it's definitely present no matter what you do or where you go. So it's different from just feeling down one day, because I mean, of course, you wake up tomorrow and you feel great. So it's definitely something that's present in every aspect of your life. It's hard to get rid of.
It is, because usually when you talk about mental illness, you think about traumatic things, abuse, substance abuse. You think about more like soldiers returning back from war, and that's basically where people will kind of lump that, and then you think, oh gosh, ADHD. That's just a learning behavior, and that's my degree, and I have taught many kids that way, and so they would label them learning disability, but it's truly not that. It is lumped into mental illness of that, and so it broke my heart, because there were a lot of behaviors associated with it that we could train, but we also had to come back, and the school system, basically their remedy for it was medication, Ritalin, and we would just, they'd throw Ritalin at them, and so that broke my heart. And so that's when you were talking about holistic. I love that part of it. So can you define what you mean by holistic?
I think that like you said, throwing medication at it doesn't exactly make the problem go away in most cases. It just kind of suppresses the issue. So if you take a holistic approach, you're combining, I guess, just normal well-being, good life choices, and the medicine. Because, of course, medicine is very important. You probably wouldn't be able to overcome the issue without it. But combining those other two things, I feel like, is very important to, I guess, overcome that great issue.
Okay. So that way the medication just doesn't become a cover-up. Mm-hmm. And we need to look at the person as a whole, right. Just as like Jesus, time after time, looked at the person as a whole, not individual or one little part of them, looked at them as a whole. So I really thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, Mr. Priya, I'll let you go.
Great job, Jason.
Thank you.
So I was telling your family, but some of the people in the audience know, but I've had you 3 years in a row, and you're one of the few students that I've gotten to do that with, so it doesn't happen for me very often. So I had you in, why don't you tell the audience about the start of our relationship in class? Where did I have you first?
I don't remember the class, but
it was 10th grade.
Definitely remember coming to your office time and time again, struggling with math, and yeah, it was rough times.
Yeah, we spent a lot of quality time together in my office, and I am grateful for that. And what I noticed in those couple years in class, it didn't feel like you had much to say, maybe because math wasn't your favorite.
Yeah.
But now I have you in astronomy this year, and it's just like a total change that, maybe Mr. Acuff gets to experience this on a more regular basis, but when there's a subject that's in your sweet spot, you have a whole lot to offer, and your knowledge is encyclopedic. there were several days this semester where you missed because you were sick, and it was like, man, I wish we knew the answer to this. Where's Jason when we need him? So it kind of sounds to me like this might be another topic that you know a whole lot about. So I don't know much about it, so I'm excited to learn from you. One of the things that you bring up is that this is a worldwide issue. 50% of the people in the U.S. will develop some mental illness. You said that's according to the CDC. So maybe you don't have like worldwide statistics, but do you think that that 50% like holds true across the world too, or is it just like a Western phenomenon?
I think it might even be higher, especially like in places like China or Japan, where there's a lot of pressure on them to work extremely hard, long hours, that it might even be worse over there, to be honest.
Okay. One thing that I did in just a little bit of digging, the World Health Organization said in the last decade, there's been a pretty significant uptick. They said a 13% increase in mental health issues. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if, like, why you think it's changing, why you think it's increasing.
It's very hard. That's part of the book that I was reading, is trying to tackle that puzzle and try to solve it, because it's difficult to kind of put to words like what's going on. But I mean, the rise of social media has definitely contributed to it, and then just the political climate is not great either. Lots of argument, lots of division. And then, among other things, it's not exactly easy to 100% nail down like the problem, but those two things definitely have greatly contributed to it.
What do you see as? I think social media is an easy punching bag for a lot of issues that we can blame. Mm-hmm. But how do you think it contributes to the increase in mental illness? Because that's certainly something that's been on the uptick in the last decade.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely easy to hide behind social media and rely on it as like I don't think purpose is the right word, but just
Do you think that things like mental health overlap with spiritual health, physical health, social health?
Quite a bit, honestly. Well, like I talked about a little bit, there's a lot of things that you can do daily to keep mental illness at bay, like just being social, breaking up the monotony of daily life. Prayer helps. There's just many, many things that you could just do in the beginning to stop this great thing from ever occurring in the first place.
Do you think there's a meaningful difference between what you might call spiritual health and mental health?
I think so. There's definitely that. Bad actions definitely have some bearing on your soul, and I think that if your soul is in a bad place, then definitely your mental health is going to be in a bad place. So there's a connection there, but they're definitely two separate things.
It is very interesting. I think that might be why it will be so hard to crack the code of the mind, so to speak, right? Because it's like, well, the mind has this weird dynamic of being both, what you might call the brain and this relationship with the soul. So, a similar question. Do you think that false belief plays a role in mental health? Not just religious belief, but sort of beliefs about the world, about the self.
Like, can you restate the question?
So, let's say I'm someone who, for all intents and purposes, is normal. My brain has nothing wrong with it, but it's full of falsehood. So, could that be considered healthy, or is it a different problem?
Ignorance is bliss. As long as none of those things come to light, I guess not. But if you're putting all your eggs in a bad basket, I guess, and then all that comes crashing down, it's definitely going to rock your world, I guess. It's going to have a huge effect on your mental well-being.
Mm. So whenever you hit those walls of reality, problems might arise.
Yeah, if anything puts your beliefs into question, you're going to have some serious thinking to do.
Which I think even shows all the more complexity of what mental health is, because it just all of these different things about who we are connect back to it, right? And so I'm not sure if there will ever be a solution, so to speak, like you said. Every person is unique, and the uniqueness of who we are is beyond comprehension.
Yeah, I don't think there can be a solution. For there to be a universal solution, it would completely undermine the uniqueness of each individual, and I don't think a medicine would be able to do that.
So, moving on to some other subjects, some of the questions that I've been thinking about as we've been talking about this over the year. So, C.S. Lewis takes a very interesting position. I'm not even sure I completely agree with him, but he advises against journaling because he thinks that oftentimes it causes more harm and just sort of makes people brood. Do you agree or disagree?
It might be more of like a mindset kind of thing. If you're writing down your thoughts to reflect and to look back on them, or you're writing them down to be hateful and I guess angry at the world, there's a huge difference there.
So on a similar note, do you think there's a right way to talk with people about your problems? Like, could there be a similar beneficial way or harmful way to help?
I definitely feel like dropping all your problems on someone at once is not a good way to handle it, but just looking to someone and saying, hey, can I talk to you for a little bit? I need help with something. Instead of just immediately going into that, may be more beneficial, because there's only so much that someone can handle when they're listening to your problems.
So not so much about just offloading your issues onto someone else, but actually wanting help.
Yeah, exactly.
Support. What's the right mindset we should have as people who are listening to people showing us their struggles, opening their hearts to us? What should we do as listeners?
I think just have an open mind and just keep their well-being in mind and just love them for who they are. You don't necessarily have to agree with everything they say, but just keep an open mind and, be ready to listen.
Do you think listening is more important than giving advice?
I actually think so, yeah. Because sometimes, like I said, if you have a mental block or something, just talking to someone is helpful. Because all those negative emotions can, like, bottle up inside you, and just letting all of that go is a very positive thing.
And do you think there's are there other factors that play into how important the social dynamic is? Would you have someone to share with other reasons why that's such a critical part of the process?
Can you restate that?
Sure. Why do we need to be with other people when we're dealing with these kinds of problems, as opposed to just trying to pull the lone wolf and go handle it by ourselves?
Right. Like I said, it's very hard, and you may not even be able to recognize some of these things in yourself. You need some sort of outside opinion or someone that has your best interest in mind to kind of look at it and say, hey, this is something I see that may not be the greatest thing for you. Maybe waking up at 4 a.m. every morning and going to bed at, I don't know, and doing all these negative things, like alcohol, I guess, it may not be great for your mental well-being. You just kind of need someone that's there to just help and listen.
So listening, the advice, the other perspective sounds like is one of the critical parts of it. Because I agree. I think that when it comes to the false belief thing, people who experience depression often, they say, oh, well, this person must just hate me. And the friend can say, like, no, that's not necessarily true. And sort of give pushback in that regard. So it is a really, really cool way that works out. I guess 2 more questions I have real quick before I pass the mic. So, what can we do to be more attuned to signs of mental illness in the people around us, like the people that we love? How can we look out for those things?
I mean, it's just important to stay informed, be very aware, because a lot of mental illnesses, there's a spectrum to them. Some people may exhibit certain symptoms, while others may exhibit different symptoms, and it's important to be able to see all of those symptoms, as a whole, so you can recognize which ones your friends are going through, and then hopefully be able to help them.
So the importance of education, and as far as what do people with anxiety and depression do that might not be obvious? I remember one of the ones that I didn't know of is a thing called anhedonia, where sometimes people with depression just don't feel anything. Right? And it's you might not think that's depression if you don't know what you're looking for. Right? So that's a really powerful tool. I actually think there's some instances where people can almost help fix themselves if they just know what to be looking for.
Exactly.
So the role of education is critical on understanding these things. I guess my final question for now. Why do you think so many people don't take preventative health more seriously?
Well, I definitely know that, especially, I guess, 3 decades ago? I don't know. It's been better recently, but definitely in the past it was just the idea of, well, fight it on your own, man up, just, you're not really going through anything, it's fine. Although that idea has evolved recently, it's not exactly perfect. There's still a large contingent of society that still believes that, and it definitely doesn't contribute to the solution.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Well, now, Mr. A took a couple of my questions, so let's just go with this one. I like this, when I read your paper, and you said, forgive me. Every individual is unique and overcomes adversity differently. Well, Jason, the morning that you walked in 7th grade, I knew you were very unique. You walked in, you had on shorts, and you had on those soccer slides, the sandals. And you wore those sandals every single day. the weather started to change and it got cold. And I said, Jason, and he was shivering outside. You're like, just start open that door, it's cold. And I'm like, Jason, if you'd wear shoes, you wouldn't be cold, and pants. And you said, I'm wearing these every single day this year. And you did. So I knew you were very unique. So just enlighten us a little bit more about other areas you've been unique in.
Oof.
G-rated.
Besides my own stupidity when it comes to fashion. Oh, God. Maybe my bad habits when it comes to dealing with school. I have a bad procrastination problem, I guess. So, I mean, I like to call it efficiently lazy.
Okay.
So I'm good at doing things quickly and good, so I can be lazy for the rest of the day. So maybe not a great thing, but it's unique.
But it's unique. Just to remind you, still owe me your photography file. We don't want that laziness uniqueness to go all the way, okay? All right. So the other part of that overcomes adversity differently, and we know that you have dealt with a lot of adversity with this. So what are your coping skills that have helped you through this journey at MCA, through your life of having ADD?
Well, I know that having a good support structure is important. Having good friends to talk to and a good family around you is very important. And then small steps of just doing things that you enjoy. Because I know that school can get overwhelming and it can be hard to see the end of it. I mean, and not even just school, just life in general. So it's important to find those areas of time where you can just kind of take a break, enjoy what you love, talk to people you love, and that should go a long way to helping you overcome these things.
Okay. You talked a lot about having that person to talk to. Who are the people that you trust to talk to?
I have quite a few friends that I bother with my issues, and they bother me with their issues. So it's also important to kind of be there for each other and not just kind of let someone or dump everything you have on someone else and not really be there for them. Because I mean that's a poor friend right there.
Good give and take. Well, what about the person that doesn't have those trusted friends? They do have friends, but it may not be the trusted friends, and their friends could listen to them and give them advice. Is it better for them to approach their friends, or should they seek out a therapist?
I think it's very, very, very important to talk to someone you trust. So, I mean, I think if you don't have anyone you fully trust in your life, a therapist is a good option. And even if you do have people that you trust, a therapist is always a good option. Just because you need someone that very much so understands and can relate to your issues.
Because the therapist might have that training and that education towards that, how to guide you, where your friends may have not even a clue of what you're even walking through or doing.
Right.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you, I think it was, your interview was with Dr. Hankins, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you interviewed this psychiatrist, and you're going into psychology, but I just want to ask, I've never dealt with a psychiatrist before. How did that interview go?
He was really chill. Like, he was... I could tell he has a passion for his craft, I guess. He was very chill and willing to talk, and I guess gave me as much time as I wanted to just kind of converse with him and see his own unique perspective, being like, I don't know, 30 years in the field. So it's definitely helpful. I don't know if all psychiatrists are like that. I think you definitely need to love people to be a psychiatrist. It's not really going to go well if you don't. So
Yeah, because I was just wondering, because when you think of a psychiatrist, you think going into their office, laying down on the couch, and they're sitting behind you, and you do all the talking. It would cost me a lot of money to go to a psychiatrist because I could talk forever. But so anyway, so I thought, if he doesn't talk very much, I was just wondering how that interview would go, if he's not very talkative. But can you tell me 2 key things that you walked out from having that interview with him?
I was lucky because he definitely agreed with me for the most part about the complexities of the issue. He said in his practice, it's very important to be able to look at the person and deeply, I guess, understand what they're going through and the complexities of it, so you don't misdiagnose or misunderstand what they need. And then another thing. Honestly, that was most of what he talked about. He literally has to deal with that every single day. That it's on his shoulders to be able to understand and, I guess, contemplate what they need and what's best for them. And that really takes, I guess, a caring soul that has a passion for it.
It really does. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for sharing that. Another thing I wanted to ask you. In the Wisdom of the Buddha, okay, is that a book?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Why did you choose that book?
So I feel like I did talk a lot about the Christian perspective, and I think it's important to remember that there's a lot of books outside of Christianity that have a lot of very good ideas, and Buddha was one of them. He definitely was a Christ-like man, I guess, before Christ existed. So he was definitely someone that we can learn from, even if he's outside of Christianity.
Oh, I totally agree, and I'm glad you did that. And I like what you said. Bad deeds and deeds hurtful to ourselves are easy to do. What is beneficial and good, that is difficult to do. Why do you think it's the positive thing and the good things? Why is that so difficult for us?
I feel like it definitely has more bearing on you. If you do something bad, you can definitely not think about it and you can just move on. But it takes a lot to be there for someone and to go through what they're going through, support them.
Okay, good. Well, Jason, I'm watching the time, but I always like to do kind of something a little funny, One of these days I'll get fired for it. I think it hasn't happened yet, but it might happen. Anyway, we'll see. You talked about dopamine, okay, and so it's a brain chemical, and it's been known as the happy hormone, all right? It influences your mood and motivation and feeling of rewards. So, it kind of when we watch those cat videos, it makes us happy, or a hilarious meme, and, those type of things. So I thought I'd tell you some jokes, and y'all kind of, I'm learning from my little granddaughters, so they're going to be probably cheesy,
All right, I'll take cheesy.
But a joke might make you chuckle, and if it's really funny, which mine may not be, your heart might even beat a little faster, and you might get tears in your eyes, and you might even have a little trouble breathing. And so laughter is just a good all-body experience, okay? And so in my teaching of my special ed kids, I found that humor always kind of did the trick and everything. So I thought I'd tell you a couple of brain jokes, all right? So, I better get my glasses and make sure I read them correctly. All right. What happens when your brain sees a friend across the street?
What happens?
It gives a brain wave. All right, my second one. Why did the brain refuse to take a bath?
Why did he?
It didn't want to be brainwashed. See, some of you are getting this whole experience. What kind of brain images do dogs and cats like best? PET scans. So, Jason, thanks for letting me have a little fun with you. All right.
I have no jokes for you, Jason.
Oh,
Sorry.
shame.
I only make jokes or memes or laughing.
I can tell.
So I had just a couple quick questions, and I wanted to see if Mr. Acuff wanted to ask any more. I'm so happy you guys ended up together this year, because what did you study at university, Mr. Acuff? Also psychology. Okay, that's what I thought. And I know you're interested in brain health, and I hope you guys had a lot of interesting conversations across the years.
Oh, we did.
Yeah. So I definitely am not the expert at the table, and I'd love to hear you guys go back and forth. You talked about just trying to learn to recognize these things in your friends, and you talked about kind of needing to, as a friend, learn to educate yourself. I'm wondering how, as a friend, you do that. Because it's sort of like you hear these things that maybe as you share with me what's going on with you, and then I go to Google and what does this mean? And they usually say that's a bad way to find information about this ache that you have in your side. It's like, oh no, I'm dying. I didn't realize that, because if Google is my source for information, it could be that I'm getting kind of the worst case scenario. So just what advice do you have for somebody who's trying to be educated? Do they need to subscribe to this psychologist journal, or how is it that I, as a friend, can learn to stay informed with what's going on in the world or with my own friends?
So there's definitely a lot of reliable sources out there, thankfully, when it comes to psychology, unlike medicine, I guess. And also, listening to a reputable psychiatrist or psychologist, and even just listening to the stories of people who've been through it on YouTube or whatever can go a long way to helping you understand the complexities of it.
So as a listening friend, I know you said listening is really important. When should a friend decide that it's time to intervene, or you realize man, it's beyond my pay grade, so to speak. How do you decide when that point is, and what do you do for a friend that you realize, okay, this person needs more help than I can give?
So, you can't exactly give help to someone if they're not ready for it. So I feel like it's more important to just kind of be there and say, hey man, I'm here for you. Just talk to me whenever you want. Doesn't mean they will, and that's okay. It's more important to just be there for the help, and sometimes that's almost better than talking.
If you see that there's a risk that your friend might hurt themselves, I guess, is there a point where I should, as a friend, if my friend is sharing kind of what's going on with them, that I go, yeah, I need to talk to your parents, or I need to call someone. Is there a point where a friend should do that for another friend?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done that for one friend before, who lives far away, and I can't exactly just go talk to him. So I did talk with his parents, and it's definitely something that if you feel like it's too far gone, you definitely need to intervene, and their parents are a good person to talk to.
Do you think that's a breach of trust with that friend, or was that a breach of trust that probably that friend confided in you?
Well, okay, if it's more beneficial to them, it is a breach of trust, and I would never do that unless it's under very extreme circumstances. And that if you do believe that someone will hurt themselves, it's much better to betray their trust than have them, not be there tomorrow. They'll definitely forgive you for it in the long run.
So there are, I guess, some secrets that just aren't worth keeping. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for being so vulnerable today. And I think I stole the last couple minutes I wanted to give you, Mr. Acuff, but it's your turn to ask us a question, so please go easy on us.
Okay. Have you ever been impacted by someone that has a mental illness? And if not, how do you think, as a teacher, that if you see someone going through these things, that you could help them?
This isn't a topic that comes up very much, but I have mental illness in my family. My dad has been clinically treated. He's been hospitalized for it. It's something that is a pretty distant memory for me. It's something that it was, I guess, 30 years ago was the last time that he received professional treatment. A lot of the things that I read in here were very applicable to things that he had to deal with, and he even still battles, which I think is really interesting, that like there are healthy lifestyle choices that you can make. Medicine can help. Friendships are important, but none of those things necessarily make it go away. And there is, I guess, like you said in your quote from The Republic, something beautiful does come from struggle. And I think as a result, my dad has a lot of compassion for other people who, like you said, you have to have a big heart for people. Some people are naturally born with it, and some people come about it the hard way. And so it certainly has affected the way that he treats others, the way that he has interacted with his own kids. It's something that as he's learned to overcome, he's given me a leg up to where I don't have to fight all of the same battles that he fought. And so I think he knows the power of an affirming word, and he continues, even though I'm 41 years old, to send me a text about every week or two, like, hey, I'm a big fan of you. And maybe it's because he didn't get those when he was a kid, but like, you never get tired of hearing that. And so I'm grateful for what good God has brought out of the struggle. I'm not grateful for that struggle for my dad or for you, or would I wish that on my worst enemy. But there can be something good that comes from it, and I see that in your life. I see you turning what the enemy has intended for evil into something that's good. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Well, like I said, I've dealt with so many kids like this, and I have story after story, and it's, I guess, one that just, really, did come to me. I had their paperwork, we knew what to do, but just building that relationship with them. And I had a young man that he came in, and he was such a precious young man, but he just did not have any hope in his life because he had 3 older sisters, and when he was born, his mother left his family, his dad and the sisters, at the hospital when they were released because she wanted another girl and did not want a little boy. And so he had that guilt, and his family was broken up because of that he was a little boy. And I had him in 8th grade. He came to me, and he had a criminal record already, and that was the last point. My class was the end of the road, or they were going to put him into a facility. And so one day he's there, and he just broke down, and he started bolting for the door. And so I got in front of the door and wouldn't let him go out, and he's hitting me, and I just would not let him go out. And so finally I just grabbed him and I just hugged him. And I got him up against the wall, and I held him that way, and held him for 2 hours, and taught a reading class and a math class to my other kids so they wouldn't freak out. We had to be just as normal. And so it kept him from being expelled and being sent to the facility, but we had to just walk in every day. When the counselor would ask him, he said it was that love. I finally had a mother's arms wrapped around me. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to basically keep him in the room, but what that touched. And so I realized that he just needed a hug to know that he was okay and accepted. So that was one of my stories.
That's amazing.
I'm not sure how I'm going to follow up with that. Try not to cry. Wow. I guess to say this both lovingly and also seriously, I come from a family of crazy people on both sides. through adopted sites too. There's a lot of people that have been institutionalized or sent to hospitals, and it's a thing from my past, which I have also inherited. So I think it's interesting though that sometimes the craziness can be like a double-edged sword, because you automatically see a different perspective when you're going through these things. Like I'm sure the things that you've been through, right? So you have a different perspective from people who haven't gone through some of those things, right? Some of those same problems. I think that's a very powerful way it's impacted me. Seeing learning from my parents and grandparents, some of the mistakes they've made, some of the things they've learned and tried to impart to me has been very, very helpful. And I also think it's the reason why when I was socially awkward and isolated, I turned to people like Kierkegaard, because you see someone who was also perhaps mentally unstable, who was writing to people. I mean, he dedicated so many of his works to people like the lonely ones, right? So there's definitely connections that can be made even throughout history in that regard. The legacy that you leave, the impact that you make. It's a lesson that I've learned that I would like to pay it forward eventually at some point. But so yeah, that's been my experience with some of those things. So that's a great question. So thank you for asking that. Mr. P, would you like to close?
Let's pray. God, we are in awe of you and the way that you work. God, the way that you redeem what's lost, and you help heal what's broken. Because we live in a fallen world, those things don't go away. But you don't promise that you are going to fix those things now and make them go away. We look forward to a day that you do make all things new. In the meantime, what you do promise is that you're with us and you're close to the brokenhearted, and that you're the man of sorrows, Jesus, and none of those things are lost on you. Thank you for Jason and his life experience and his willingness to share and be open. I pray that you will help, that you will make today a marker for him and for these friends and family who are gathered here to know that they're not alone, and that you are close to them, and that learning to take care of themselves and listen to a friend and talk to a medical professional, all those things matter. And we love you, and we promise in Christ's name. Amen.